Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and I'm joined once again by Aram in Toronto.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Long time no talk.
Yeah. So this is part 2 of our Oakland Warriors playoff preview. If you haven't heard part 1, that will be there's going to be a link in the show notes. And we basically just talked everything Warriors. It was like a really fun, thorough conversation about like 45, 50 minutes long. So definitely check that out. Who we are as Warriors fans really came out in that one. But for this, we're going to talk about the Warriors and the rest of the NBA, like in terms of the different rounds, who we think is going to make it past and make it through to perhaps the finals. Maybe we'll see. But
yeah. I mean, I think there's the two minds, right? Like there's the Warriors focus, kind of like, oh, what is their road to the finals, and just being realistic, or if they don't, what is the most likely pick to be? I'd also say too, and I've mentioned it before, I mostly just watch I'm just a fan. I'm just a Warriors fan. I don't cover the NBA. I don't watch all the games. I do, watch NBA TV or whatever and tune into games here and there when something looks interesting. But that's what's fun about this. I mean, I think it's this just in general. I think this is going to be a really good playoffs. There's some really good first round matchups, and the East is really interesting. I guess we should also say before, we should just jump into our picks, but we should say that I believe one of the play-in games is happening right now. So we don't know the 8th seed in each of the first rounds just yet, but that's easy. I mean, so shall we just go into it and get your picks in?
Oh yeah, man, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Let's, so, one of the things that always bugs me about reading sports, and it's every media outlet, is they always start in the East and then they go West. So how do you want to start West and then go East?
Yeah, man.
It's super annoying, especially if you're reading. It's not so bad in the in basketball, but if you're like a baseball or football fan, you always got to scroll down to S,
Yeah.
For San Francisco. Yeah. Oh, super annoying.
I mean, our listeners here are Warriors fans. They're in the West. I'm sure a bunch of them just don't even care about the East, So yeah, let's get to it.
Okay. All right. So in the West, you have your number 1 seed is Phoenix, and they will either face New Orleans or the LA Clippers. Paul George's not playing in that play-in game. Mm-hmm. So we can pick in either case. For me, whoever they play, whether it's New Orleans or the Clippers, I say it's Phoenix in 5, the gentleman's sweep.
Yeah, I think it's Phoenix. I was hoping for the Clippers to make it out of the play-in, and they still could. I mean, again, we're recording before that game, but I just figured that their experience and their toughness would be a bigger challenge, and their depth would be a bigger challenge for the Phoenix Suns. So I'm pulling for that. But regardless, I think if it was a healthy Clippers team, I think it'd be 5 games. New Orleans, I think, could get swept. So Phoenix.
Yeah. I'm kind of pulling for New Orleans in that one. Just, I like some of their players, and, it's always nice to see a young team go against a juggernaut and see what they can learn from it. So, okay. Yeah. I'm going to go to the next, which I think is maybe the most boring series, like the series I'm the least interested, especially in the West, Dallas and Utah. How did you know? I mean, I guess there's some intrigue to this one because Luka is definitely out for game 1, probably game 2. It's crazy. Yeah. He got hurt in the last game in the second half. So initially this one for me, I would have been like, oh, Dallas in 5 or 6. But right now, because there's so much question, I still think Dallas pulls it out. When Luka's been out, Jalen Brunson is pretty good. Although I think that was pre-trade, but they might be better now. They have Dinwiddie. So I'm still picking Dallas in 7.
I mean, Well, this is a really boring series. I mean,
I'm not going to watch any of these, I don't think.
it really does depend on when Luka comes back, right?
Yeah.
Bottom line, if he misses any more than 2 games, I think it's Utah. But if he comes back after one, I think it's the Mavericks. If he comes back after two, I think it could be kind of a toss up. But, just to, I mean, it could be, it really, like, I'll go with the Jazz just to be different. I think if the Jazz can take the first two, then that could be difficult
Yeah.
for Dallas to come back from, because the first two are in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if Utah can steal those, then they're up against something. And it's not like Utah is a terrible team. It's just that they have disadvantages. But if they have a 2-game advantage going home, they could put it away. So not in a
Yeah.
sweep per se, but just
Yeah.
they would have a lot of momentum. And with Luka be coming back at full strength, calf strains, man. I mean, those are the things that we've seen lead to KD's torn Achilles, or in Draymond's case, it's a back problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
who knows what it could be?
No, it is a big wrinkle in this, and it almost, like, more than anything made me think of, there was all this kind of position and seeding jockeying in those last couple of days of the season. It's just like, oh, Phoenix has a much easier path now to the conference finals. Because I don't believe in Utah, and if Luka's compromised, even if he comes back and he's 75-80%. Yeah, it just makes it that much easier for anybody. So yeah. Okay, so let's go to, well, I mean, if you listen to episode part one of this, then we both picked Warriors in 6. So I think we can just skip over that. If you want to hear our breakdown, you can go back and listen to part 1.
Yeah, we had a very thorough breakdown of why each of us picked the Warriors in 6 over the Nuggets. So go back to episode or part 1 if you haven't heard it.
Okay, and then maybe the one that everybody's the most excited for: 2 young teams on the up, and 2 young teams that like to talk a lot. So, and I think they've already started some of the verbal jousting. So Memphis and Minnesota. This is the one I wanted to see for sure. Like, it's going to be super fun. Like, this is the must see TV one.
Yeah, I've been wanting this. Like, I think I've been like talking about it for like a month or two, because once I realized that Minnesota was like winning consistently and they were rising, then I was like, oh. And I think they played one game in Minnesota where Minnesota won. I could be wrong, but it was a very, very entertaining game. And just when you compare those two teams, like Anthony Edwards, John Morant, you got like Karl Anthony Towns, you got Jaren Jackson Jr., and you just have the youth and confidence and attitude of the Grizzlies versus some of that from the Wolves, right? Because, like, D'Lo's pretty quiet. Cat is a little bit more vocal, but he's relatively quiet. But you have Anthony Edwards, whose game is very loud, and whose just personality is very big. And then you have Patrick Beverley, who's just nonstop talking.
Yeah.
Then you see these teams like, in this mirror image of each other. It's like they're getting what they give. So obviously, like, I'm thinking that the Grizzlies are going to win. They're just a better team.
Yeah.
But there's so much athleticism and youth on each side. Like, you go to McDaniels, you can go to what's his name, Vanderbilt, on Minnesota. Like, those guys, like, both those teams in their own way give the Warriors problems. I mean, we'll get to that later, but like, I go with the Grizzlies just because they've been consistent and they played so well without John Morant, which shows me that their players are overall just like clicking better. And I will say Grizzlies in 6.
Yeah, that's the same for me. I think they're both super dynamic teams. I just don't, and I think there's going to be some fun games. I think Karl Anthony Towns, what was he doing in that play-in game? He was just wild. He was out of control. And so, but they got past that. They showed they have enough support. And that's a good sign for them, because he pretty much can't play any worse.
Yeah.
And I would expect that he will play much better. So that's going to be exciting to see. I just think that Memphis, they just have a little bit more discipline. I mean, some of that play-in game was ragged from Minnesota. So I think Memphis has a little bit more polish, I mean, they did play in one series last playoffs. And so, and I think that matters. And they've just been more consistent this year. It'll be interesting to see, not a lot of teams have the size to match up with Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, he is one of those premier bigs that when we're talking about the Warriors, our worries about the Warriors bigs, it's like, well, this is a team that is not worried about that at all. Right. So that's going to be interesting. And it's almost like, is he more frustrated by smalls like he was in the Clippers game, right? Because they were just playing him with, smaller 3s and 4s and then bringing a big to double him. And that just like made him crazed. So it's just going to be an interesting series for sure. And like coaches that haven't really been on the stage much, but who have been lauded for their work this year. So it's always fun to see some franchises on the rise.
Yeah, and I'm impressed. What's the Minnesota's coach's name?
Chris Finch.
Finch, yeah. From Toronto, right? From the Raptors. And I'm impressed by him. Like I've been impressed by him. When I've watched Wolves games, I am impressed by his demeanor. He looks very confident. Looks like he knows what he's doing, and obviously it has worked. Man, I'm just excited as hell for that.
Yeah. I mean, you just got some crazy dynamic players happening. Yes. That's what playoffs is all about.
I mean, Beverly yapping at Dylan Brooks. You know what I mean? Like, come on. It's gonna be fun as hell.
It's gonna be super fun. Okay, so maybe let's go to the first round in the East then, and then we'll come back and we'll do our semifinals and conference finals and that kind of thing. So, all right, East first round. So Miami versus either Atlanta or Cleveland. Again, we're recording during the play-in game right now. So
Cleveland is ahead.
I don't think it matters. If it's Atlanta, I think Miami in 6. If it's Cleveland, I say Miami in 5. Cleveland's they've had a nice season, kind of derailed by injuries a little bit, but Miami's a really solid team. They have so many playoff tested performers. I don't think those other teams have enough.
Yeah. I mean, those were my picks too, actually. 6 for Atlanta and 5 for Cleveland.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. I mean, it's funny, right? Like, again, going to the parity of the league this year and the fact that there are very, very good top end teams, but no singular dominant teams. It's like, we haven't picked a sweep. Like when the Warriors would play, it's like sweet. So
maybe, I think if anybody, it could be a Phoenix sweep. And then I think the next one could be a sweep, although I'm also picking the gentleman sweep. Milwaukee and Chicago. This is the Dallas Utah matchup, in that like, I'm not that interested in it. Great players on both sides. I love Giannis. I just think Milwaukee is just so much better.
Yeah.
And Chicago's not full health, and
Yeah. I mean, I can see that being a sweep. I'll throw a 5 out there just for the heck of it, but definitely the Bucks. There's no question about that, hands down.
Don't have much more to say about it. Bulls, great year, and it's it's like nice when Chicago is good. Okay, let's go. Let's go to some. I'll save that one for last. So I'm in Toronto, so Philadelphia and Toronto. I'm really excited for this because I don't like, Toronto is just a really interesting roster in that they got all these like arms and legs and long dudes and like 2 guards, and so they cause problems for teams because of what they can do defensively, but at the same time they don't have any centers. So, and they're playing the probable MVP this year in Embiid. So for
most people say it's Jokic is the MVP. I don't know.
I think Embiid's going to win the MVP.
Yeah.
Just because.
Well, that's my pick. NBA.
Well, we talked about that in
Yeah.
the episode before the last one. Um, we want to hear some of the awards picks. But this one, I know a lot of people are giving the Raptors a real chance. And I think even the betting line might, or I think I saw they had a probability. It was like 52% Raptors. But I'm picking Philly in 7 on this one. I think it's going to go all the way. I think this is one of those instances when people talk about stars matter in the playoffs. Philadelphia has 2, and like 2 top tier playoff tested all NBA players, and the Raptors don't. They have some really, really good players. Van Vliet's an all-star, Siakam's an all-star, and they're playing at a high level. We love Scotty Barnes, but I just think Philadelphia is going to pull through somehow. I'm happy to eat my words, but I think it's going to be them in 7.
And Thibault, he's not playing in Canada, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's another reason why it goes a little bit longer for me. Like, I would pick Sixers in 6. I don't think they'll take the series in Toronto without Thibault. But I don't want to say the same thing as you. So on the record, I will say Philly in 5.
Oh, 5. Okay.
Yeah. I honestly think it'll be 7. It'll be 7 without Thibault, but just to be different and not to contradict the fact that I said they wouldn't win game 6 in Toronto without Thibault, I'll say it's 5.
Right.
Back myself into a corner.
Okay. Well, okay. Now this is the one that I'm like, I have no idea where it's going to go. Boston and Brooklyn. Like, I think this is in terms of the East first round matchups. This is like the marquee one because, and it's funny too, because wasn't it, it was Boston had a chance to kind of, duck the 2 seed, which Milwaukee did, I think, actively do to get to 3. And Boston was like, no, we don't care who we play. And for good reason. They've played really well since January. I think they've been one of the top teams, if not the top record. But man, this is a tough matchup of all the teams that you would want to play. Like, you would not want to play Brooklyn in the first round.
No, the team that everybody else thought would be number 1 or number 2 seed at the beginning of the season. Granted, they don't have Harden anymore, and Ben Simmons, he might come back, but they've never played together, right? Yeah. So it's like, what can you expect from that? I will go Nets in 7 because I'm going with, like, some of my personal feelings. I'm a KD fan, and as all Warriors fans should be, and the ones that hate KD, I just don't understand. But I think as good as Tatum has played, he might prove it this year, but he hasn't proven it to me yet. Like 2 months ago, the Celtics were like just written off, right? That they're just like a couple of guys, and like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to move Jalen to really build this team into a contender. So, and if Robert Williams isn't playing, that was a huge advantage for their defense. Yeah. So I'm going to go with, like, as good as Tatum is, I mean, KD's, his transcendence as a player, and then Kyrie Irving's fresh legs and experience in the postseason, combined with, like, their other guys on the fringes. I'm going Nets in 7.
Okay. I still can't decide what I think is going to happen. I mean, there's just great storylines in this one and great matchups.
Did you want a part 3 so we could just for that?
No. Give me some more time. No, I mean, this was just super tough. I think if Boston had Robert Williams, I would probably pick them because he was super, super dynamic for them on defense. But still, they're not bad with Tice, and they still have Al Horford. Like, they have some solid players there. I maybe just to be like you, I'll be a little bit different. I actually want Brooklyn to win, so they can play Milwaukee in round 2. But I'll pick Boston in 7 for this one. I
Yeah.
think they have good defense. And does Brooklyn have enough defense? Do they have enough support from their support players? Maybe not. It also may not matter because of Kyrie and KD.
Yeah, like I'll take Kyrie and KD over Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Bottom line, like that's what it comes down to. And it's interesting, right? Game 7 will be in Boston, so it's like it's easy to make these predictions when you don't think about where they're going to be, right? It's like, if it comes down to it, then that's going to be a tough game for the Nets, no matter what. The huge question for me, again, is just, does Ben Simmons come back, and does he actually help, or does he detract for a few games?
I don't think it's going to matter
and lessen them.
Yeah, I just can't see it mattering at this point. Like if we're talking about like somebody like Steph coming back after 3 or 4 weeks, that kind of thing, getting reintegrated, being in real shape, having played all year, it's like that's different than a dude who hasn't played at all, hasn't played a game.
The only benefit I see really from him is like, throwing like a 6'10" dude out there on defense.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to, do you want to go to round 2 conference finals and who pick our finalists? Okay. So let's go back out west. So we have Phoenix and Dallas or Utah. I picked Dallas. You picked Utah. I mean,
yeah, I'll pick Phoenix in 5.
Yeah, I'll go with Phoenix in 6 versus either of those teams.
Yeah.
Well, Phoenix in 5 definitely if it's against Utah.
Yeah, Mavericks. If it's Mavericks, I would go 6. Just because that means Luke is healthy. But
Okay, we both picked Warriors in 6 and Memphis in 6. So here we go, Warriors, Memphis. Are you going with your heart or your head or both?
Both. I'll go Warriors in 6. I think they win at home in Game 6. So I'm going with that. Like, obviously, Warriors fan. Obviously, I see certain things in this team. If they get there, all the caveats about health and whatnot, like I just like our chances. And it's not one of those things where I'm like, oh, we got it locked down as long as like the main guys are healthy. But I do think I'll speak this into existence, right? It's like I'll lean on the Warriors' experience and their ability, hopefully, just to get hot. And if Poole, Steph, and Clay are consistently scoring and dangerous, Memphis has never seen that team. What I always said about the play-in game last season was that Steph was tired as hell for that game, and it was still close. It was just a couple of bad possessions towards the end of that game where John Morant got into the lane past Steph, and Steph had 5 fouls. So he actually played him really, really badly at the end of the game on defense. So different teams overall, like the Grizzlies are better, but so are the Warriors, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of ways, if the Warriors get to the second round, then the team that we haven't seen all season is, showing the promise of the team that we haven't seen all season. And so I will use that logic to push the Warriors in 6.
Okay, I'm going with my heart and most of my brain, and I'm gonna pick Warriors in 7. I think it's gonna be like an absolute like dogfight. I think it's gonna be super tough. And people talk about, but people talk about, oh, the Warriors don't have anybody to stop Ja, and nobody does. But also, the Warriors played LeBron James and Kyrie in the finals. So they know something about what to do. And they had to go through, peak James Harden all those years. So they know what to do with, top level, like dynamic all NBA player. Right. And part of it is just like, just make it harder for him, and just try to wear him down. And so, he's going to get his, and you just limit everybody else. And so does their support players have enough? Are they good enough? Are they are they ready for this? Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm gonna count on, is that uh, the Warriors have a little bit more edge in that realm. So
Yeah.
we'll see, but it's gonna be a tough one. Oh, it's gonna be a stressful
Yeah.
series.
It's funny because like I was going to say Warriors in 7 because like you said it's going to be a dogfight, and by saying 6, it's interesting because I'm not saying it's going to be easier, and they're like, oh, they'll take it in 6, but for me it's like if it gets to a game 7, I think Memphis might take that, right? Because it's in Memphis,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's why I'm like saying like if the Warriors are going to win, you know, it'll be most likely if they can finish it off at home in game 6. That's
Well,
kind of the logic.
well, you quoted a Warriors kind of Warrior stat about the core guys, and that they've never lost when they play together. The other stat
Mm-hmm.
is that as long as they've been together and healthy, they've always won a road game. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident in their ability to win in Memphis. We've
Yes.
seen it before, and I think we'll see it again. Okay, so let's just keep going to the West. So
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix and Warriors in the conference finals. Okay, I'll go first. I actually I think this is where it ends. I don't think the Warriors are going to beat them, and the reason is like Phoenix is just so finely tuned. They have more. I mean, they have that run more freshly in their minds from last year. I
And
just
yeah, yeah.
and the Warriors have not been great at crunch time. Maybe by the conference finals, they will have smoothed those things out. But I don't know, man. I think I just think some of those things that have come up are going to catch up to them at some
Mm.
point.
Yeah. 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 I can totally see that because the Warriors, one thing that we didn't maybe talk specifically about, or at least I didn't when talking about them in the previous in part 1 of this, was that like there's inconsistencies, but it's like they those inconsistencies reveal actual problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you make some good points. It's like they could lose because like in those moments, in those crunch time possessions where Phoenix doesn't make mistakes because they were all there last season in the finals. So they they don't make mistakes, but then the Warriors would, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's a behind the back pass or there's a turnover, which the Warriors obviously are prone to
yep.
doing, tons of turnovers, right? Or free throws, something like they're just not as tightly packed, you know, of a playoff team. And so
Yeah.
their weaknesses where like other teams, say against the Nuggets or even against the Grizzlies, like some mistakes the Warriors would make, uh, the other team would match them in making their own mistakes. I worry about that with Phoenix, and this could be where it unravels. But to be different, I will say Warriors in 7.
Well,
But it's tough, right? Because you're right. It's like the Warriors have championship pedigree, DNA, experience, but like they can't spread that to Jonathan Kuminga,
yeah.
to Bielitsa. So
Well,
whereas like
and despite the DNA, it's like they've always had the turnover gene. You know what I mean? It's like you can't completely discount who you are too, right?
right, yeah.
And I think the same things that could hurt them in a Phoenix series could derail them against Memphis too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
but
yeah.
you know, I'm on this train, you know what I mean? So like I'm gonna make every excuse in the book. No,
Well,
I think I you know, like I think I'll say it is tough, but it's like I'll just go Warriors in 7 for the sake of argument because it's what I want to see. I can imagine it happening again. It would be a brawl. And then there's always the X factor, which is Chris Paul versus the Warriors. That never ends up well for him. Right? So the basketball gods hopefully are on our side, and karma as well.
Okay. So we've gotten through the West. Let's go back to the East. We had Miami getting out of the first round, and they would play. We both picked Philadelphia, so Miami, Philly. I'm going Miami on that one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Miami early in the season, my picks when the Warriors were playing well for the finals were the Warriors in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some weird losses, and they've had some turmoil. But I'm just a believer in, like, they have some real gamers
And are
on
they
that
healthy? They're
squad.
healthy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Lowry's healthy.
I think Bam might be coming out of COVID protocols right now or
Okay.
something like that. But yeah, I think everybody's healthy. We all love Spoelstra. I mean, he's arguably the best coach.
Yeah.
So and they've been there before. So I just, I don't think Philadelphia is very deep. They have some really great players, but I don't think they have enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so you picked Brooklyn, I picked Boston, and we both picked Milwaukee. So, I mean, I picked Boston to be different too, but I think it'll be Brooklyn. And a Brooklyn Milwaukee rematch, that'd be amazing.
Hmm.
So who would you have in that one?
Oh man, the X factor of Ben Simmons gets even bigger, right? Because if he comes back in against the Celtics, that means he's got a little bit of a rhythm playing against the Bucks. But still, geez, um, I'll go Nets. I'll go Nets because Kyrie scares me in the playoffs, man. Like
It's
rightfully
great.
so, right? I
We've
would
lived
just
that, unfortunately.
yeah, and I don't think Drew Holiday can stop him. And I think it's not just Kyrie. Then you have Kevin Durant, and I don't know who could really stop Giannis, but I'll go. I'll go Nets in 7 because it was so close last season when they didn't have Kyrie, and James Harden was like a third of James Harden.
Yeah.
I'll count on Kevin Durant still being in his prime and that ability to lift that team up.
I'm gonna go Milwaukee in 7 with this one because I think so many things were exercised for them last year in their run. I mean, just
Mhm.
even to the moment that they won, you're just like, how are they gonna mess this up? And I just think that they're, like, watching them play when I have, they just have a confidence about them. I don't think they're gonna get as rattled. This is gonna be a huge test. And yeah, Kyrie is scary, but I think they have their players all healthy, and, like, they're just a more complete team than Brooklyn is. Like, Brooklyn just has, like, amazing top end talent. Seth Curry's good. They got some dudes, but I just don't think it's going to be enough.
That's
So
fair.
I'll go with Milwaukee. Okay, so I think so. We both picked Miami, and so Miami versus Brooklyn in your case, and I'll go with Miami versus Milwaukee. Who would
Okay.
you pick?
Oh, well, I mean, all of a sudden I'm like given the option to put Miami in there because that was my early season pick. So I will, but Brooklyn is what I want to see. I want to see like KD in the finals again. Um, I'll go with Miami, man. They're just like, I feel like the coaching, Spoelstra over Nash, and then just the continuity. And Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, those guys, they're just like a couple steps below KD and Kyrie, you know what I mean? But the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they have Bam, they have Tyler Hero, they just have like more solid dudes and they're a better overall team. I think Miami will beat Brooklyn in, I mean, I'll say 7 because they're going to take it at home ultimately.
Okay. I had originally picked Miami to get to the finals because I thought that they had a easier path. Like, they
Hmm.
got to avoid, like, they only have to play one of Brooklyn, Boston, or Milwaukee.
Hmm.
But now that it's coming down to it, Miami versus Milwaukee or Brooklyn.
Hmm.
Well, and I'm picking Milwaukee. I think it's gonna be Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee will beat Miami, even though,
Yeah.
like, in my mind it's like, oh, it'll be Miami, but I think it would be Milwaukee. And so for me, I basically am picking a rematch of last year. I'm picking Phoenix and Milwaukee, which is like kind of boring in the way that the Warriors and Cavs had all those years against each other.
Yep.
But rematches are sometimes fun. I don't know that this would get people too excited if they had a rematch, but I'm just picking what I think is like the realistic path.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. The NBA playoffs mean next level basketball. Get in on the first round action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets instantly. You win no matter what. All DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on NBA hoops with same game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. Plus, each day of the first round, get a risk-free bet up to $10 if your same game parlay doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the first round of the playoffs and get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code TBPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. So, who do you got?
I'm picking Phoenix to win.
Why?
In the rematch. In 7.
Yeah.
Going the distance.
But like, what's the rationale?
Just because the unfinished business rationale. Because I don't know. Because I'm making this up because I on my notes I'm like Phoenix versus Miami, and I just changed it in my head. So I haven't thought about it too much, but I think there is something. We've seen it times before where a team goes all the way, they get so close, and they're just like on a mission. That team owner aside is just so cohesive, right? Yeah. And they're on a mission, and you've seen it play out in how they've played this season. Yeah. I mean, they're just a machine. Their coaching is great. They're deep. So I think there's just something to that when you've lost, being so close and getting back and doing it again.
Yeah. In your scenario, I would take Phoenix as well. I mean, obviously they have the best record. I mean, and they've just been so consistently good, and they have Chris Paul makes a huge difference in terms of the confidence that he gives to those guys. And I mean, Devin Booker is like an amazing player, right? So it's not just Chris Paul, and all those guys. I mean, they're on a string. They're on a string on offense, on defense, mentally and physically. So I would totally take that in that matchup. But in my matchup of
you got the Nets and the Warriors.
No, right? I got the Heat and the Warriors.
Oh, you got the Heat and the Warriors. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nets is what I wanted at the start, but then I picked the Heat early in the season once I saw like a handful of games, and then now I picked them over the Nets. But in that, I mean, Warriors made it this far. I'm not even going to think about it. I'll just say Warriors.
Hell yeah!
But and that would be an interesting matchup for me because they're just in general, because those are two teams that you don't really think about playing each other that often, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all the other teams, you're like, oh wow, Warriors Nets, or like,
they have history.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, I would pick the Warriors, but it would be like a fascinating matchup to me, because I think Spoelstra is a better coach, just strategically. Yep. I think that would be like really, really just like brutal dogfight. But ultimately, I think the Warriors would just transcend it. I think the Warriors would win in 6. Again, this is assuming that the Warriors that we haven't seen this season, they beat the Nuggets, they beat the Grizzlies, they're humming, they're clicking, they're on a roll. They beat the Suns. And so you tell me they beat the Suns, and in my universe, they're not going to beat the Miami Heat? Nah, they're going to beat the Heat because they're just like rolling on everything.
So, but then how about for fun?
Yeah.
This Warriors team that's totally humming plays Brooklyn, because that was your Eastern Conference finalist, and that's what you wanted to pick. But
I'll take the Warriors. I'll take the Warriors still. I mean, this is like the most homerish I've ever sounded. I think because I'm just kind of convincing myself like why it's going to be the Warriors. But I think that's kind of like the funny part of it. If I had to like go with just like, okay, not the Warriors, like I erase all that stuff. Um, I think it's the Suns. I think it's the Suns. They're just like the best overall team. If I put the Suns versus the Grizzlies, I'll take the Suns ultimately, right? And then if I look at the Suns versus the top uh, three, four teams, Suns versus the Heat, I'll take the Suns. Versus the Celtics, I'll take the Suns. Versus the Bucks, close, but I'll take the Suns. Sixers, Suns, Nets. Whew. For some reason, I think the Nets could beat the Suns. Or maybe, again, that's just what I want. I want KD to beat Chris Paul.
Well, man, I mean, the Nets could beat anybody, and they can also just flame out. So,
I mean, similar to the Warriors, but less extremes, right? That's how it rolls. I mean, these prediction things are so like kind of absurd, right?
Because, I know that's the whole point. We're gonna go back to this and said like, you thought that this team, you thought,
because we don't know like what's gonna happen in each series, like who's gonna get hurt, how are they going to look, and then it's just based on like an imagination of what I think the Warriors are gonna look like against the Nuggets, and then I'm predicting that from there, right?
Well, just projecting ahead. So. Yeah. So just to kind of zoom out from this, we made our finals picks. This is kind of more speaking to the heart and the fandom. So what team and player on the team? So what team would you most like to beat, and who would you least like? Who would you hate to lose to?
Grizzlies and Grizzlies.
yeah, same. Like the answer to both is Grizzlies. Like, I mean, like, you know, we can't beat them for the championship. So this is of course with the caveat that like, like I'd most like to beat whoever we play in the finals so that we win the championship.
I mean, I'd hate to lose to the Nuggets, right?
Right. But just like that, there's just the extra like little like saltiness that Memphis has for the Warriors because like Andre Iguodala didn't play for them. Like it's just so stupid that I just want to I want to beat them, and I really don't want to lose to them. And I would love, and it's entirely possible that we will.
And I would love to just like, oh man, if Steph could have like a great series, if they got to play Memphis and just remind them of all those years that he would like just stick daggers in them versus like when they had Mike Conley, Tony Allen.
But like, well, no, I want, remember in the 2015 playoffs and he hit that 3-quarter shot.
Yeah.
And then they zoomed into the fan who was like, I want that to happen again.
I mean, can you imagine it? Like, you know, you're the fan base and it's like, oh, we used to lose to these guys all the time. And then it's like, oh, we got these new young guys, you know? And it's like, oh, we lost to them again. That would be pretty entertaining for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so like that's absolutely my easiest pick.
It's because like there's no Lakers, there's no Clippers. I mean, most likely no Clippers. There's no, old school Cleveland team. There's no Houston Rockets. So like, who else is there now? It's like
we need new enemies.
Yeah.
I would say the kind of like second one that I would pick would be the Nets. Not because I am one of the fans who dislikes KD, but it's just imagine the drama and the storylines. It would be so charged. So I would love, I mean, that I think it would be a super entertaining series too.
Right.
To beat them. And I don't want to lose to them. Like, I mean, I definitely don't want to lose to anybody.
Yeah.
But obviously, as fans, you're like, oh, if we had to lose, I'd be okay losing to that team. That's this ain't one
voice,
of them.
That's a very good like cartoon voice or something. But yeah, no, I get it. Again, I wouldn't want to lose to anyone either, but I would love to beat the Nets just because that would just be an amazing spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple questions about the Warriors. We kind of talked about the NBA playoffs as a whole, but um, so a couple of things. Who do you think is better? So like the last time the Warriors were in the playoffs was the 2019 finals, which
Yeah.
is wild, like because
Mm-hmm.
that just feels like a ages ago.
Mm-hmm.
But if you took the 2019 Warriors team without KD but with Clay, and I don't know why I'm putting these stipulations on it, but I mean that is the team that played most minutes in that finals, right?
Yeah.
They only had KD for 10 11 minutes, and they had Clay for most of that series, right? He got hurt.
Yeah.
So the KD less 2019 Warriors, are they better than the current 2022 Warriors? Who would you take?
Here's the funny thing, right? It's like, of course you include Clay because yeah, he was in that, but it's like if you don't have Clay on that 2019 team in this hypothetical, it's like hands down, like this team
Yeah,
is
you have
better.
nothing.
2022 team is better, right? But even now without KD, like it goes to what we've been talking about, throughout um, this playoff preview and even like the end of season review. It's like we don't know what this team is, so it's hard to say. But I think this team is better because they're deeper, plain and simple, right? Uh, they are a deeper team, and that was like the problem when they were playing the Raptors. If you look at the bench, honestly, I'd rather see Damian Lee than Quinn Cook or
Yeah.
Alfonso McKinney, right?
Yeah.
But like now, Damian Lee isn't even in the rotation. So
Well, I mean,
I'll
you
say
think
this
about
team.
that 2019 team. You had Steph, you had Clay, you had Draymond, you had Livingston still, you had
Mm-hmm.
Andre and Looney, and those were like, and like DeMarcus Cousins on one leg,
Yeah,
and that was about it, right? Am I
yeah.
forgetting anybody? I don't think so,
No,
right?
no, that's pretty much it, man.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I totally agree. This current team is way deeper. I mean, when I thought of this question, I was thinking about Jarebko trying to check Jonathan Kaminga because they're both
Oh
the
my
kind of
lord.
like down
Yeah,
rotation guys, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
like no contest, right? But I would say that, I mean, the big difference is it's what, 4 seasons later, 3 seasons later, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Age.
that's a
Yeah,
big difference. And 2019 Clay, as good as he's looked in these few weeks, I mean, 2019 NBA Finals Clay,
yeah,
I mean, he looked like a top 10 player.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and I think like that combined with the fact that like you have Clay now who's we don't like you made a good point. Sometimes he's 90%, sometimes he's 30. The past final week of the season, he's been like 90% Clay, maybe like 100%, maybe 105% Clay, right? At least on the offensive side. So it's again, it goes back to that uncertainty, which I hate to keep bringing that up, but we know that it's just a reality. Like we had so much certainty when the Warriors were a dynasty. We had certainty when they were trash in those 2 lost years, right? They're not going to win this, like it's just going to go all in a bad direction. So it's hard to say, but the fact that you have all these other guys who can fill in those gaps, right? Granted, it's not going to be 9 on 9, right? You have to pick your 5 best at any given point or your rotations, whatever. But I think like the Warriors right now, and again, if you take that Warriors team minus KD, and you played that team the whole season, like how good would they have been, right? It's tough to say because who would be their small forward ultimately throughout that
Mm-hmm.
season? You have somebody else, so like there's just it's tough. And because we've seen a Steph who was not lights out this year, he was an MVP caliber last year when they made the play in, and he was that way for about October, November at least,
Mm-hmm.
and then that stretch where he got around Ray Allen's record, he started shooting poorly. and he never fully recovered. But and then Draymond, like how we don't know. So I think it's fair to say that this team could be better if they had the time to meld. And
No,
that's
but
the
they're
big
playing
question.
tomorrow. They're playing
Exactly.
tomorrow.
Right.
Don't have time.
Yeah. So, it's a, we'll see. Clay could
Yeah.
turn into 2019 Clay in like 3 days. You know what I mean?
All right. And then last question. We did the season in review just to like think about the marathon, but
Mhm.
ultimately like you're in the playoffs and that's ultimately what you're judged on.
Mhm.
So like what would you see as a success and what would you see as a failure? I mean, obviously championship that's everybody's goal. So like take that out of the equation of like, or out of the matrix of like success.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, are you a person of like anything short of a championship is a failure?
No, no.
No. Okay, I'm not either. But where are you? Where do you land on this?
I think losing in the conference finals is a success, as long as you don't get swept. I mean, making it to the conference finals, I think, is a success, but battling hard is the real success. And like
Mm-hmm.
losing in 6 or 7 would be reasonable. It'd be painful. I'd be pissed, but I would be like, okay, like that feels about right. I think losing to the Nuggets would be a failure.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Absolutely.
bottom line, I think losing to the Grizzlies, I mean, that's where it's like I'm not too sure. I it would be hard for me to say right now because, like, honestly, it really depends on like how they look if they beat the Nuggets, right? If they're
Mm-hmm.
like clicking and they lose to the Grizzlies, I'm like, that's kind of a coming up
Yeah.
short. But if it's
Yeah.
like they just like snuck past Nikola Jokic, on some
Yeah.
very clutch shooting in Game 7 at home, then it's like, you know, the Grizzlies probably have their number this year, and I wouldn't consider that a failure. So, but definitely losing first round is a failure, and to me, and making to the conference finals would be like, okay, I feel good about like where
Yeah.
this is at.
I mean, I think it's good to highlight what you're saying is like it's yes, like the result of this series matters, but it's also the quality of the play in that
Mm-hmm.
series. So, obviously losing in a first round would be complete failure. I think getting outclassed in the second round, like, oh, they lose to the Grizzlies in 5. They're just too old, too slow. Their system is too predictable, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a failure to me. I
Yeah.
think if it came to a Game 7, they lost to the Grizzlies. It was like an amazing series, like kind of a success. And then a conference finals appearance. That's pretty. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And assuming that they play well there too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really about the competitiveness, the quality of the play. All of those things are kind of referendums on your team, your
Mm-hmm.
coaching, your system, your development, all of those things. And it really, I mean, that's why it's so loaded, right? Because it's like a
Yeah.
final judgment.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested. I don't think this team will ever lack for competitiveness, but
Mm-hmm.
I do have questions about their age. I do have questions
Yeah.
about their athleticism. I do have questions even about their system, their
Yeah.
offensive system. So to see how it plays out, that we'll have to decide, I guess, when that happens, whether or not it was a failure or a success.
Yeah. I think that's perfectly fair because, before it was like, I never did podcast episodes during the playoffs or during the dynasty run, so I can imagine it'd been like, oh man, we are so good.
Did you
But
see that game? Wow.
it's like, well, but for this, it really, yeah, like a success and a failure is really, really going to be defined. There's going to be questions no matter what if they lose. There'll be questions if they win, but if they lose, like it's a failure if the scenario leads to questions like very extreme questions, like questioning everything to the extent that it's all wrong, or like, oh wow, this shows me that this run is over. But if it's something where it's like, oh, you know what, they were just missing this thing,
yeah,
and they came up on a team that was like the Suns that were just consistent, solid all season, no mistakes. And the Warriors just didn't have enough cohesiveness throughout the season to prevent themselves from, having 20 turnovers in 2 of the games, or getting out rebounded because they didn't have anybody besides Bielitsa, once Draymond got in foul trouble or something, so I can see that. Like, so it's like, it's just not enough to get over the hump. That kind of scenario would be a success. But if it's a loss where it's like, oh, they just, they're done. They're done, like they're a step slow. Draymond couldn't do it, and it'll be telling. That's what's going to make this so like fascinating. I'm like kind of not sure what to expect in game 1, even as confident as we are, because of all the variables we've talked about throughout the season, up and down the roster. With Steph, the one consistency, he's been out for a month. So how are they going to be? Like, I can see the Warriors blowing out the Nuggets. I can see them losing.
Yeah.
Because we've seen that throughout the year.
Yep.
Yep. So that's why they play the games.
That's why you play the game.
Cool, man. All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on for another epic marathon episode. Appreciate it, man. I hope to have you on during the playoffs at some point again.
Yeah, the early games. Early games and weekends.
Yeah, so man, basically if they make the finals against the East Coast team.
Oh, man, it's going to be rough.
All right, man. Well, that is another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. If you did not catch part 1 of our playoff preview, check it out in the show notes below. Be sure to tell your friends to tune in and listen to the Oakland Warriors podcast. Check us out, oaklandwarriors.com. You can find me on Twitter at Patrick Epino or at Oakland Warriors. You can find Aram at Aram Collier, AramCollier. Be sure to check out the new YouTube channel. That link will be in the show notes below. And definitely, please do tell your friends to tune in and listen. And if you are so inclined, leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, and say nice stuff about us in a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be super helpful and much appreciated. Thanks for listening. That's it. Go Dubs. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time